Hello, my name is Keith Wilson. I'm an organizational development consultant with Scroggins Greer, which basically means I help people work really well together to achieve outstanding results. So I get to help people work in a way that they enjoy being together, that they communicate really effectively, they align to do incredible things that they've never been able to do before, which sounds like a lot, but really it's a pretty fun job. But Scroggins Greer is a business that helps a lot of different consulting and services for a lot of different privately held businesses and nonprofits. But I focus on helping your team do the best they can. We focus a lot with nonprofits on preventing things such as burnout. So that's really what we're here to talk about today, is the greatest enemy to your nonprofit being burnout. So that is today's topic for the Securing the Future conference in 2021 with the Leadership Council for Nonprofits. So I'm really excited to share with you about this. I'm partially excited because I get to share about my own failure and my own problems. So hopefully this is, I know it will be inspiring for you today, and it'll be something meaningful because you'll see where I have messed up, and I'll show you how we've implemented some things that can really help prevent burnout for your organization and for yourself as well. We'll look at it through both lenses today. But I want you to think about something for just a second. How many of you travel, right? Raise your hand if you want. If you travel and you've flown quite a bit, you've probably heard this in-flight speech that happens pretty much at the beginning of every flight, right? The flight attendant comes out and starts talking about, hey, in the event of a loss of cabin pressure, or oxygen masks are going to fall from the control panel above your head, take the mask, pull the wires, the little rubber band tightly over your head and place the mask over your mouth and nose and breathe regularly, right? That's the instruction. You can probably all recite this. But what is the next thing they talk about, right? You put the mask over your mouth and nose, and you do that before you do something else. Hold that thought. Some of you know this speech well enough that you must do that first before something else. I want you to think about that a little bit more here as we get into this. So again, thank you for having me. Let's talk briefly about what a nonprofit organization is. A nonprofit organization, not the IRS term. I'm talking about what is the purpose of a nonprofit in general. A nonprofit exists to make the world better. You all do this work. You joined what you're doing right now. You're involved with it because you care about this mission. Your nonprofit exists for a mission. It exists to educate people. It exists to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. It exists to maybe get people pulled together that are going to do something better for the world, for the society. And we're trying to further our interests, further the world, make things a lot better for human beings. We exist for people. That's the entire idea. Your nonprofit exists for people. Nonprofits are very pro-people. We exist to make things better for human beings. The problem is, while we exist for this purpose, to make the lives of people better, sometimes, we lose ourselves in the process. Sometimes we give so much that we sacrifice too much, and our own lives become worse because of it. And there are things we need to do personally in organization to prevent that from happening. How many of you heard this story, right? You have a volunteer who joins the organization, who dives in head first. The first time maybe they even volunteered, a second time they just become in love with the mission. They're so passionate about it that they show up every day, every few days. They end up leading volunteer efforts, maybe even becoming part of the staff, maybe not part of staff, but given 45 hours a week. We've all had those people. And they give so much. Over months and months and months, they do it with strength and dignity and honor and grace, and for maybe weeks, months, years, until they don't, right? Until they burn out, they fizzle out, they crash and burn, right? How many of you have had seen volunteers do that? How many of you have seen coworkers do that? How many of you have seen leaders do that? How many have done it yourself? Raise your hand. I'm going to raise my hand because I've done that, and that's part of what we're talking about today is my failure. All right, so brief backstory of me. I spent 15 years in a nonprofit world out of college. This is where I spent the first 15 years of my life, and that's what I knew. That's what I came to know. And the last, about a decade ago, is kind of where this started to lead towards this burnout stories. I was I was leading a large outreach initiative for actually a large church. and I was working with community partnerships. We had never done anything like this before. And so I was creating these partnerships with all these organizations to drive the world forward to make it better in our local communities. So we had this partnership with underserved community, county foster care, pregnancy care center, food pantry, emergency shelter, transitional living, elderly care, assisted living. And we served these nonprofits. We invested in each one of them very deeply. And we had over 12,000 hours given by the people in this church to make the world better, make the community better. And this becomes such a big thing that there are other churches interested in doing the same thing. And so I was actually I've helped start 3 nonprofits in my lifetime. And one of the nonprofits I helped start was an alliance of different outreach organizations in my area. And we ended up aligning all of these other organizations together. And a bunch of churches came together to become a part of making a difference in our community as one, instead of little pockets of it, to drive deep and create sustainable change, right? And so we had 12,000 hours just our organization. Well, then other organizations wanted to copy it. And so as I'm starting this nonprofit, that became the model for a lot of these other churches that wanted to do what we were doing. We had partnerships with these organizations. We're given 12,000 hours where people weekly involved with these things. We also, one of the big things we did, so we had a day. My wife loves to tell this story because it was her idea, an outreach day where instead of people coming and showing up and going into the church building, they went out in the community to do good things for those in the community. And so we showed up and we had all this work ready to go. Instead of going in and sitting down, we had shovels and paintbrushes and clothes, and trucks, and we went to these organizations and more, and families that they had identified, and served them through the day. Now, incredible thing. First year, we had about 300 people show up. So we didn't do church on this day. This was our church on that day. The second year, we had about 600 people show up. And by the second year, this other nonprofit I'd helped, alliance that I'd helped form, got wind of it, and so they all wanted to do it. So they joined us with it. And so I started teaching this model. So I had volunteers and staff working for me in my organization at the same time as in this nonprofit I helped start, and all these other different organizations that were copying what I was doing, teaching, training into them, and they ended up getting involved. We ended up having 300 the first year, 600 the second year. Other organizations get involved, and we get 1,200 the third year. The fourth year, we had 15 other churches get involved, and we're serving at like 90 sites. It was on the news and everything. We had 2,200 people, 300, 600, 1,600, and then 2,200 the fifth year. So fourth year, 2,200, fifth year, guess how many people we had? I have no idea. I have no idea because I crashed and burned in the middle of all of this. Of course I did. There was too much going on. Even though I had staff and volunteers who were reporting to me, working for me, and I had created really good structure around it, it was too much. And so I don't actually know. I had to take a sabbatical and take an extended time off from work because I was toast. I was done by the fifth year. And I don't know how many people showed up. I know they still did it. I know it was a success, but I don't even remember, right? And that started the beginning and the end for that role because it was just too much that I had created for myself because of what I believed in. And I know that some of you have done the same thing. So we talk about this in business where we have this problem of disengagement. The biggest problem in most businesses is that people become disengaged. The biggest problem I see when we work with nonprofits is not disengagement, it's this burnout problem. It's that people give so much that they crash. So I want to show you a few interesting kind of facts about this here. Coming back to our little screen. Interestingly, nonprofit turnover has risen. In 2014, according to several different studies, it was about 6th in the country. So this was about 16% nationally in the United States, which put it about number 6th on the leaderboard when it comes to turnover. So turnover was a little high in nonprofits. But look at this. After about 7 years, look, it grew up to a much higher percentage, right? A 21%, from 16% to 21%. And that took it from number 6 to number 2 in 2019. Now that is a significant jump. It's the biggest industry-wide shift of any other industry of those 5 or 6 years. And we know that the more turnover you have, the more there's an indicator that something's going on under the surface. But we know this in culture. We talk about that in business, that the higher your turnover, more likely the more there's issues culturally going on under the surface. What is this then in nonprofits? That turnover is probably linked to this thing called burnout. So this is based off an Opportunity Knocks survey a number of years ago, that they found that 58% of employees in nonprofits say they feel used up at the end of the day. Maybe some of you have seen this. 58%, 6 out of 10 of our people feel used up at the end of the day. Now, interestingly, let's think about this for just a second. You've got 58% of people feeling used up at the end of the day. And of those 58%, those people who feel used up are 4.5 times more likely, 4.5 times more likely to want to quit their job and to say they're going to leave their job in the next year or two. 4.5 times more likely because they feel so used up. Now, why is that? Why do people just want to quit? Well, I want to give you a little bit of information about this. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is what is the cost of this burnout on us? Clearly, there's money involved because people are leaving and quitting, but there's a much greater cost. Much greater cost. Okay, and there's two sides of the coin. So this burnout is a problem. There's two sides of the coin that contribute to this. Okay, and we're going to talk about the individual side because it has to do with individual people. And we're going to talk about the organizational side because it has to do with our organization. We both play an important role in preventing this thing. So let's talk about those two sides, right? So first is the individual side of the coin. The individual thing contributing to this is that people give too much. They believe a lot in what we do, and they give too much to it. I noticed in my example, I noticed in my life, but barely. My family noticed, some of my friends noticed, my coworkers noticed that I was heading towards being really burnt out and tired and exhausted and frustrated. I didn't see it in myself quite as much as they were seeing it. The real problem is that nobody called me on it. Or they didn't call me on it loud enough, strong enough for me to hear it, right? But I was heading down a path of burning out and didn't realize it until it was too late. So I want to tell this story about nonprofit leaders. So I was coaching a group of leaders, all nonprofit leaders, this is probably about 6-7 years ago. 6 or 7 on a group call every week, and we're talking about how to lead well, how to lead best that we can, taking care of ourselves and our family and the mission that we're on. And they had this homework this one week. It was a great question I love to ask, is to come back and I want you to talk about how much do you love your job? And why do you love your job? How much do you love your job? And why do you love it? And so people come back and they're going to report. And one of the people who's going to be talking, his name is Bill. And so we're meeting to talk about this with Bill. And this is a virtual thing because I've got people in different states as a part of this, and even somebody in another country as part of this group. And he comes and he's going on and on and on about how much he loves his job. It's the greatest job. He finds so much purpose, so much meaning in it, and it's the greatest thing ever. And I know as Bill's talking that he loves his job and he would give anything for it. But there's a point where I also know Bill's family. And I know that he gives a lot to his job, and I'm not sure what his family thinks about it. And I said, Bill, it sounds like you really love your job. Oh, yeah, I love it. Go on and on and on and on. I said, okay, well, let me ask you a second question then. He says, okay. I said, how much does your family love your job? And he went, what? I said, I know you love your job, but how much does your family love your job? And he goes, well, my family knows I love my job. I mean, they know how much time I spend. They know that I'm really committed to it and how much I'm passionate about this mission. I said, no, I know they know that you love it. How much do they love your job? And he went, it's my job. I said, yeah, but your job affects them, right? Yeah. Do they love your job? And he went, I don't know. I said, all right, well, here's the homework for next week for everybody. I want you to go talk to your people closest to you, your spouse, your kids, your parents, your friends, whoever. Pick 3 or 4 people and sit down and say, we're talking this week in my coaching group about how much we love our jobs, but we were challenged to ask the question of people closest to us, how much do you love my job? And so we get back together the next week. Everybody leaves, goes and talks to whoever, and comes back. And we get to Bill. Bill, tell us about, you love your job. We know you love your job, but how's your family feel about your job? And he, entirely different composure about him. He looks wore out even. And he goes, I learned this week that my family hates my job. I mean, hates my job. They can't stand it. They can't stand the organization I work for. As a matter of fact, they hate the mission because they hate my job so bad. They don't see that as even being valid even more. I mean, he was almost devastated by how much his family hated his job because he had given so much to it, that he had sacrificed time with them, sacrificed his energy at home, his attention at home for years this way. And it devastated them, and they knew it was breaking him. And since then, that's been a great question I've asked. How much do you love your job? How much does your family love your job, or those closest to you? Because we can give too much, right? I know I allowed myself to make sacrifices that I shouldn't have made in my nonprofit time. And the organization allowed me to do the same. So the individual problem is I can give too much. I can be so committed that I don't even see the problems. Matter of fact, once I got this time off, I felt like I had all this pressure on me to do, go, all these things laying on me that created this anxiety at night that would keep me up and might wake me up. But I took this sabbatical time, and the first 2 weeks of that, I felt the exact same way. Still the same to-do list, still the same anxiety, still the same pressure to move, go. And I realized after 2 weeks of feeling that way, my wife said, this is no different than when you were working at the end of the day. And I suddenly went, oh, the problem isn't my job, it's me. Or at least it's a lot me. Because I brought the same rhythm and same problems home. The problem can be me. Is the problem you? A great question to ask yourself is, who am I letting challenge me? Who will help me ruthlessly pursue my own personal and professional health? Who around me is going to challenge me to ruthlessly pursue my own personal and professional health? So we need people like that. So that's kind of the personal side, the personal message to you. But what about the organizational side of the coin, right? There's two sides of this coin of burnout. There's the personal side and there's the organizational side. And the organizational side is that the organization doesn't stop this from happening. So we say in business that when people become disengaged, they get frustrated and they do one of two things. When people are disengaged, they either resign and leave, or they resign and stay. They either resign and leave, meaning I'm going to quit and walk away, or they write the resignation, but they keep showing up every day, meaning they've resigned in their head, but they're still coming in, and they're not really doing much. They're not contributing well. We all know people who have done this. I've done this at one point in my life. And so what's interesting for nonprofits is we don't see people resigning and staying much in nonprofits. I don't see that a lot. I see people resigning and leaving. I don't see people resigning and staying because so much of their life is their job is about the mission. And as soon as that mission takes over, then the integrity of what we do is at stake. Right? People are so committed to that thing that are people our greatest mission, then we're so committed to this thing that we're doing, and it doesn't feel like I'm your greatest mission when I work for you, then I'm out. Because it doesn't feel like you care about me. It's a great quote I want to read from Beth Cantor and Eliza Sherman from the Happy Healthy Nonprofit, where they say, an organization's work may be mission-based, but its people are mission-critical. Organization's work may be mission-based, but its people are mission-critical. You see, the organization has a role and responsibility in this. So think about this for a second. If our purpose is people, if our purpose is furthering human cause, and we sacrifice our people in the process, the people closest to us helping us make this happen, we lose credibility. Because we say we're about people, but then we do this and show that we're not really about people. We're really about getting this stuff done, not about people. And the skills tip against us as an organization. Think about it. It would not be a big deal if you heard the story, if there's a news story tonight about a grocery store that was being investigated for tax evasion, right? Is it a big deal? Probably not. It's probably not even going to make the news because, I mean, a grocery store, tax evasion, whatever. But it is a big deal if a public accounting firm is being investigated for tax evasion, right? Because they absolutely should know better. They're the ones who hold the values up here. What about if you had a meeting at the EPA, right? For some reason your organization gets involved with the EPA. We're going to show up at the EPA for a meeting, and you show up at their corporate headquarters, and there's thousands of cars in the parking lot, and every single one of them is an SUV or an 8-cylinder pickup truck, right? Gas guzzlers. That would be appalling, right? It's the firefighter who's an arsonist, right? When we see somebody who says, I hold this standard about something, right? I'm the one who's out there championing it and living it. But then behind the scenes, I'm the one who's sacrificing that very thing. The integrity of our organization is at tremendous risk. It's a breach of integrity. And for nonprofits, when we say we're about people, and then we don't make sure our people are healthy, then we breach our own integrity. It's the most cardinal breach of integrity that we could commit as an organization. And it is our responsibility, it's vital as nonprofits that we create an environment where people can pursue personal and professional health. I'll say it again, it's vital as a nonprofit that we create an environment where people can pursue personal and professional health. So I asked this question earlier, who in my life personally am I going to allow to challenge me to ruthlessly pursue personal and professional health? Great organizations see that it's their responsibility as well to be the people who challenge their people to ruthlessly pursue personal and professional health. It's something you got to do. We all know what's at stake. Now, so how do I do that? I get it, right? This is why I need to do it. How do I do it? And I'm going to tell you a couple of good ways to do this. We're going to talk about it personally and organizationally first. So we're going to look at it personally. Personally, you need to do this for yourself when you're involved in a nonprofit. So great story I heard a number of years ago. It's a true one. I actually got to meet this gentleman. His name's Bob Goff. He is an author, speaker. He's an ambassador to Uganda, runs a nonprofit. He's been an attorney. He's a fascinating guy who's done some crazy, amazing things just to show people love and to show the world that he loves them. And it's an incredible book that you could read about his called Love Does. But one of the things that he does that I found really interesting is when he starts a new job, he takes an envelope, right? He writes out his resignation for the job he just took. I need to resign from this job effective immediately. Thank you very much for the employment, yada, 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 and the timer, and signs it himself. Doesn't date it, signs it, puts it in a sealed envelope, addresses the envelope to his boss, and puts a stamp on it, and he gives it to his wife. Literally hands it to his wife, and he says, the day that you think this job has become unhealthy for me or not good for me, you have my full permission to mail this thing in. And you don't even have to tell me about it ahead of time. Can you imagine doing that? He said his wife actually did it once. He showed up at work, and he walked in, and they said, what are you doing here? He said, what do you mean? They said, we got your resignation letter on Friday. It was a Monday morning. He went, you did? He said, did Marie send that in? They said, it's right here. He said, well, I guess I'm done. So they helped him figure out when, he was done in 2 weeks or whatever. But he let her mail it in. He said he got home that day. She was staying at the driveway like, I told you that this job was going to be too much, right? She just mailed it in. Now, I've done the same thing. I've written out a resignation and said to my wife, we can send this in whenever you need. I didn't come to so much as letting her have it stamped because I'm a little afraid that it, impulsively, she might do that or it might get mixed up in the mail, and I don't think that would go so well. But she has full authority to walk into my office and grab it and say, hey, it's time. Because we need people around us to help us ruthlessly pursue personal health. Now, so I would encourage you to do that. Write your resignation and give it to your family. And I'll give them that full authority. That seems scary, but man, if you do it, it'll change the way you view your job, and it'll change the way they're empowered to talk to you about it. Secondly, you got to create some really good boundaries. You must have boundaries of your time throughout the day. You got to have time a day at night where you turn things off and you don't look at it anymore. You got to have a day of the week, especially. My wife and our kids, we have 4 kids at home. We've done this for, I think, 8 or 9 years now, where we have a day of the week where we shut everything off from 6 p.m. on one evening on the weekend to 1 p.m. the next day, where we don't do any work. We don't do any cleanup. If there's an accident or something, we do, but we have clear boundaries. And it's not just escapism. These are life-giving things we're doing. Life-giving things we're doing. There's a difference between escapism and vegging out and life-giving things that fill us up. And we do those things. Some of them are together, some of them are separate, and we have all different personalities, but we have a time where we know it's just to take a break and rest. That has been one of the best things we've done. We had to actually get a conversation this week where we sat down and talked through changing the time we were doing that because of some different things in our life. But we need to do it. So do that personally. Write your resignation and hand it to your family. Set a time where you set some clear boundaries and make those known to everybody so they can hold you accountable. And then organizationally, there's so many things I could talk to you about that we could do. Flexible work schedule, make sure you do a compensation study, make sure that you have pay equity across all the different types of jobs, having good benefits, giving people the ability, actually making people use sick time or take time off, updating your technology, right? There are all these things that you could do, all these structures and processes, but I want to talk to you about one thing that could help both individuals and the organization. This is kind of radical, but I guarantee you if you do it, it'll change your life and the people's lives who work for you, who trust you in this mission, right? What if you created a weekly burnout prevention tool? Okay, we have a weekly burnout prevention tool. I'll share you the particulars of it in this conversation. If you use this, radically alter what happens in the lives of the people who work for you, okay? So this is what this is. This is a weekly email that goes out. It's a survey. It's automated. And when people complete it, it automatically comes back to their boss. So me as boss, I'm gonna have direct reports who get this automatically every week. And there's 4 questions on it. And I have to answer this every week. And then I get a little report as a boss. And I can check in with you every time that you fill this out. Every time in our weekly meeting, I can ask these questions to say, hey, I heard this, tell me what's going on. So here are the questions. First question is, check any statements below that are true for you this week. Now, if you email me, I'll give you this in a second, then you can, I can get this to you. But check any of the statements below that are true for you this week. And you have to be able to say yes to at least 2. And they are things like, I took a full day off without checking any work-related email or messages. I spent at least 10% of my work time on non-urgent things that excite me. So that's time at work. I worked 0 overtime hours. That seems dangerous. You can't have people checking that every week. But I had at least 3 meaningful conversations about life with colleagues this week. I spent over 3 hours in a life-giving activity outside of work. I laughed until I hurt or I cried at least once this week. So that's just a checkbox. You want to see at least 2 of those checked. The next question, the next 2 are about agreement. So it's like disagree, somewhat agree, strongly agree. Disagree, somewhat agree, strongly agree. First one, this was a healthy week for me personally and professionally. Disagree, somewhat agree, strongly agree. Second question, this job brought joy, meaning, and satisfaction to me and those around me this week. There's the bringing the family and the other people in, right? This job brought satisfaction, joy, meaning to me and those around me this week. Strongly agree, somewhat agree, disagree. And then the final 4th question. The greatest barrier to my health and fulfillment is, and then a blank field. So this goes out weekly. This is the way this is designed. We can talk to you about how this could be distributed, but this is a great once a week thing that shows up in the inbox and they're asked to fill it out. Check, 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 type a little thing, submit. It goes right to the direct boss. And now what we have is every direct boss has a checkup from every one of their people every week on is something around this role creating an unhealthy environment for this person. It's a tremendous, we call this a pulse survey. You do this a lot of different culture surveys and employee check-ins. This is a pulse survey to prevent burnout specifically in nonprofits. It works well. And you can track it then as a boss to see, are they going up or down or what's this? Now, this is the next level version of this. is I've had one client who's been game for this, and I talked to HR to make sure this is okay because I wasn't sure about this. I said, "Is this okay?" One, people would have to opt into this. They'd have to say, "Yeah, I want you to check in on my personal health." So one, you're gonna have to give your people an option if you want to use this tool. But two, um, we do this weekly to our direct reports, but we send it monthly. This is next level. Send it monthly to 2 or 3 people close to them: best friend, mother, father, kid, spouse, boyfriend, right? They get the same thing. And instead of saying, you know, this was a healthy week for me, it says this is a healthy week for Keith, a healthy month for Keith, personally and professionally. And agree, disagree, some would agree, right? How about this one? Instead of this job brought me joy, this Keith's job brought him joy, meaning and satisfaction to him and those around him this week. And what are the barriers to his personal, professional health? That goes to wife, son, daughter, mother, and comes back once a month from those around him. Imagine the breakthrough. This is next level. Some of you are going to run away and say I'm nuts, but I'm telling you, if you do it, you'd have to, HR tells me, our HR consulting in my business says, hey, they'd have to opt into that. That's entirely optional, yes. But if they do, look at what we've created. Maybe you give your people permission to submit it, but it doesn't go to the boss. It goes back to that individual. So they get a check-in. This is a conversation starter to make sure things don't go so bad that we burn out and crash and burn. Talk about a powerful tool, right? Because our organization is going to lose integrity if we don't do this. We say about people, but we don't live up to it. We don't put something like this in place to make sure that we care about our people, those closest to us. We breach our own integrity. I want you to think, I want you to go back, all the way back here to this, this whole thing we just talked about, where the in-flight safety instructions that come from the flight attendant. And I said, you know, should the cabin pressure drop, you're going to have an oxygen mask drop down. You're going to take it and put it around your head and put it over your nose and mouth and breathe normally. And then they always say, you must secure your own mask before what? Before taking care of any children or parties around you. Why? Because if I can't breathe, I can't help anybody. If I can't breathe, I can't help anybody. Therein lies the problem. When we burn out, if I have nothing left, I can't give you anything. If we don't take care of ourselves first, as individuals, if our organization doesn't work to make sure people are taking care of themselves first, we will crash and burn, it'll breach our integrity, and lives will suffer. It's vital that we create that kind of environment. Thank you for listening today. I'm excited to hear your questions as we talk. If you're interested in this burnout tool that we use, you can email me at kwilson@scroggensgreer.com, KWILSON@scroggensgreer.com, SCROGGINSGREAR.com. I think they're going to give that to you here as we wrap this out. You'll have that. If you email me, I'll give you the template for it. We can talk about how you can even kind of implement this kind of thing. It will change the world in your nonprofit. I dare you to try it. Thank you. All right. So I love some of these questions some of you are all asking here. I'm going to look at a couple of those real fast because there's some really good thoughts in here and questions that I think will be helpful. So let me just look at this here. First thing here was from Veronica. One of the challenges to working from home during this pandemic has been creating boundaries. That's a great one. So my work computer is right there. Yeah, that's always a problem, right? The computer is right there. And it's hard to ignore it, hard to ignore the buzzing, the dinging, the ringing, the whatever it is. So a couple of ideas for that I stole from other people. My cousin actually wrote a book. Here it is recently, Steal Like an Artist. Nothing's original. So we steal everything from other people. And this idea is, one, leaving my computer, phone in the car when I arrive at home until a certain time, like 7 p.m. Like, so from the time I get home, whatever it is, if there's dinner, if there's see family, until a point, I just leave it in there. The other version was to take it and put it like on the mantle or put it on the fridge, someplace that is centrally located where the family is all evening, with the expectation and understanding that I'm not going to pick that up until a certain point of the night. So I'm going to create a 2-hour boundary or a 3-hour, whatever that is. And everybody in the family knows, hey, if dad, mom, whoever reaches for that thing before this timer goes off, we're all to go, hey, what are you doing? Right. The nice thing about it being inside, and I've done this before, is if I have something I think, well, that could be urgent. That's the problem. We think, oh, well, it could be something important or urgent. And it's not 99% of the time. I don't need to respond to it right now. But if I think it could be, if there's something I know is pending, right, that has a deadline or a question out or something changed, we all have those days. We can ask our spouse, our, kids, parents, whoever, use that family and friends again to say, hey, if that buzzes, and will you check it and just make sure it's not from Julie, you know what I mean, or whoever. If it is, let me know and I'll grab it because I need to deal with that, so that we have that healthy boundary. And I like, I think it was Lucia, Leslie was saying here, we have to have intentional making this clear to employees that it's okay and expected that they turn things off, right? That's a big part of it. A lot of people do feel this pressure that I have to respond within a certain amount of time. And I've seen recently on somebody's email at the basis, a friend of mine started working in a global company, and they all have as a underneath their signature that we're a global company. We maintain hours based off of our local time zone. You may have received this email in a time outside of your normal operating hours. Do not feel the burden to respond until your normal operating hours. And I think that's an incredible way for us to communicate that, hey, if we're outside of normal hours, we don't expect you to respond to this. And especially if you're emailing somebody who is one of your direct reports or somebody underneath you on the organizational chart, that's a really great thing for you to put in an email. If you send it to them early in the morning or late at night, hey, just want to ask you this question. Don't need your response until Thursday, but it was in my head, so I was going to ask it now. Get to me tomorrow or whatever that is. Yeah, it's a good way to do that. So somebody mentioned wanting this kind of example of how to do this with the survey. We actually have there's 2 PDFs you can download. One is some of the slides, but then the second is actually a handout that explains how to do this and lists out some of those questions for you. We have a process to do it where we can actually automate it all for you. But if you want to build your own and make it happen, then absolutely it'll walk you through that. So it's important that we set the expectations. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, thank you. That not with just employees, but volunteers, donors, board members. Yep. And that can create an issue, right? Because volunteers, board members generally are going to be asking questions outside of the office hours. They're probably people who are volunteering to do this. So when they're not at work or normal board, hours, they're going to ask a question in the evening or a weekend. So clarifying that expectation is really important to do too. All right. So from Ashley, recently had numerous conversations about implementing a sabbatical policy at work. Do you have any resources on that? We've done that and implemented it at a couple of organizations I've been in. I helped one implement it. So I have nothing I could email to you quickly, but if you want to email me, kwilson@scroggensgreer.com, or through this, I think my contact information is here in Socio. I can get you something. It might be next week. I have to dig it up, but I'd be happy to do that. Matter of fact, I thought this was kind of a nonprofit thing, maybe a church thing for a while, until probably 6 or 7 years ago. I was talking to a cousin of my wife's at Christmas who works at Intel headquarters out west, and they have a mandatory sabbatical policy. It's every 7 years. You get 6 weeks, or you get 3 weeks every 3.5 years. But you have to take it. So if the Intel Corporation is doing this, then by all means, the rest of us can figure out a way to do this. So that's a good one. Any other questions that people have right now? People mentioned notifications on devices. You can set timing on that to not let you know at certain times. That's a great way to do it, to go kind of dark. And that's a very helpful tool. Yeah, it helps me a lot as well. You can set timers on your phones. You can set, we do that for our kids generally, for teenagers especially, like set a time limit for certain things. You can do that for yourself, Apple or Android. You can do that for yourself. So provide your email again. Yeah, it's K Wilson. Hold on, let me just type it in here. I think I can put it in there. Maybe not. I don't know that I can. K Wilson, KWILSON, 1L, KWILSON at scroggensgreer.com. There it is. Yes, Jill put it in there. Great. Thank you, Jill. She's a wonderful coworker who always has the details that I don't have, right? Set a timer on my office lamp. That's an incredible idea. Yep. A lot of smart lights, that kind of thing. That's a good way to indicate it and just shut it down. Really good idea. I've also done this where I've left my laptop charger at work. So it limits the amount of time I can spend on it at home, because I know I could be tempted to go, I'm going to spend 3 hours on this tonight. But if I know my laptop battery only lasts 90 minutes, then I am stuck, right? You share a few intervention strategies that you've seen used to support employees who are experiencing burnout based on the Pulse survey feedback. Yeah, we really encourage this to be a part of the management one-on-ones. If you aren't doing management one-on-ones, matter of fact, you can see engagement go down really badly. Disengagement goes up when one-on-ones aren't happening with management. So we want that to be a part of that conversation. It's part of what we were talking about earlier, is to make sure that we create an environment where people can thrive. So we have to have these conversations. We have to be opening the door. And this is really to have a recurring conversation. It's to prompt that conversation to happen so that people have the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm not doing so well. Or for me as a boss to say, you know what, I'm seeing your strongly agrees became somewhat agrees a few months ago, and now they're disagrees on these questions. So to open that conversation. And also, if you can identify a level or a number of times that you are comfortable seeing that, and you might have HR be involved in some way to say, hey, they're the people who come in and go, hey, we noticed that your whatever question slipped down below this point X number of times. So what can we do to help you? Our owner and our business is really great about coming to people if they see that the number of hours that you're logging week to week has exceeded a certain number enough times. Then he's been known to come and sit down and say, hey, you're spending too much time on this job. What do we need to do to reorganize priorities, responsibilities? That's the biggest thing, is coming and saying it in a way that I can help you as a boss, as a leader here, alleviate something on your plate if that's an issue. It's not you need to take time off and still do everything that I'm expecting you and you're expecting you to do, but let's align our expectations with each other. So let's see, bring some of these up with leadership boards can be challenging because of the perception of adding value. Any advice for that? Let's see. Is it their perception of, tell me what you mean by adding value. I feel like I should know what that means, but it's not exactly coming at me right now. Is that Kara? Yeah. Another challenge part of that is with volunteer boards, you'll often hear this phrase, well, I'm a volunteer here. I work 45, I work 50 hours, and then I come here, so there can be this tension between this is our job and it's a mission that we're on. So that's a really important conversation to have. We established one nonprofit a while ago that it was really helpful for us to say, here are the target hours per week we want you to be able to do your job in. Sure, there are going to be weeks where it has to go up, but we want it to average that. And if we then tell the board, hey, this is what we're expecting of people, and then it's easier for them to say, you know what, I know you do your full-time job and then come here and volunteer. I do my full-time job here that is X number of hours every week. some of the time I give might be as a volunteer, but here's the time I'm giving. So let's see, they want to get the most return at the lowest cost. Okay, so so adding value, you want to get return, meaning they want you to overwork. Yeah, that's a tough one. That would take some more conversation, Kara. We should send me a message, email me, and we could talk about that a little more length, because there's probably some things under that for sure. Right, because we're trying to put every dollar towards the mission, right? But again, there's that integrity breach, right? If we say we're all about people, and then we say, you know what, we're not going to pay people or allow them to draw boundaries about their time, then we're not really about people. We're not about our most important people, the ones who are helping us administrate and carry this thing out. So yeah, rough thing. All right, well, we hit our 45 here. If you have more questions, I would love to dialogue with any of you. Shoot me an email at thkwilson@Scroggins-Greer, and I'm happy to talk more. Amber, I'm not sure I fully got to your question, so we can do that if you want. Thank you all very much for the time. Go forward, lead well, and do it courageously.